Welcome back, squad player analysis. QBs, Joey B versus Baker Mayfield. Let's rock and rumble. Welcome back, squad. Like I said, we're looking at two players, Joey Burrow, Baker Mayfield. Let's get into it. So last season, they actually tied for third in overall total points at QB. They each averaged 22.5 fantasy points a game last season. So very similar spots, and I think their teams are pretty similar in makeups. Not amazing defenses, offenses that have to throw the ball, a lot of good wideouts like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins on that side. For Baker, they just drafted a first-round guy who starts with an E. I can't remember his name. But they also have Godwin. They have Mike Evans. They still have Jalen McMillan from last year. There's lots of options, and they designed it that way. And something that I like even more about both these guys is that they don't have a goal line threat running back. Not really. We'll see what happens with Zach Moss, but if he comes back and is healthy and is functional. But Bucky Irving isn't like a goal line guy. Rashad White is, I guess, the goal line guy, but he's not big and tough and strong man. That's not him. And then for the Bengals, right, you have Chase Brown, who is like a fast twig, super fast, but he's a twig. I don't love the goal line situation for the running backs, which means I like it more for them to throw. Burrow was first in yards last season, and Baker was third in passing yards last season. So they both throw the ball a lot. Burrow threw 43 touchdowns last season. Baker threw 41. Burrow was first in pass attempts last season. Baker was fifth. Tampa Bay scored a touchdown on 67% of their red zone drives last season. The Bengals, 64%. So you can see these teams profile very similar, and these quarterbacks profile very similar. Baker had 60 rushing attempts. Joe Burrow had 42, so a little bit lower for Burrow. Burrow had 42, so a little bit lower for him. And you might say, well, they're very similar. Why does it matter who I draft if they're going to look very similar across the board? And I can't predict one to be way better than the other. ADP. Now, it's still early. It's still May. This could very much so change. I do think either Burrow will move down or Baker will move up a little bit. I don't know which way yet, but I think it's going to change. With that said, Burrow's ADP is currently 34 on ESPN. Baker's is 74. Now, I don't know if I necessarily would draft either of these guys, especially Burrow at that price, but if I'm getting such similar potential outcomes, they literally had the exact same score last season. Not that will happen again, which would be wild, but if they are close to the same score, if they're 10 points off, you can save 40 draft picks, right? 40 picks of players before you have to take Baker. Baker is just slightly older. That's really the only quantifiable difference. They both have great arms. They're good quarterbacks. They're going to throw the ball. They're high-scoring offenses. That's what they do. And if I can get one 4 rounds later than the other, I would prefer that. Now, I might not even be taking one of those two. Maybe I would sit later for like a Justin Herbert or like a Justin Fields or another Justin quarterback because it's fun. But if I am taking one of these two right now, I'm sitting for Baker just because of that ADP. That's the main reason. Will those numbers change? Probably. Will it go up? Will it go down? I don't know. I do foresee that Burrow will always be ahead of himself. I do foresee that Burrow will always be ahead of Baker in ADP. Maybe not by a ton. It might even out more, but that's why I prefer Baker in this situation. Anyway, a little interesting thought experiment. Let me know what you think between those two. Maybe you just want to draft Josh Allen and play it safe. We're moving on to wideouts or tight ends or running backs. I haven't decided yet. It will be fun and it will be soon. Peace out. Peace out. I'm out of breath.